This is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to today's podcast episode. Now, today's podcast episode, I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about you taking action. Because if you don't take action on the dreams, the fantasies, the goals that are in your head, it's not going to come about. You know, right now, I could visualize, I could say affirmations, I could do mantras, I could picture myself recording a video. But the only reason you are actually watching me in this video is what I've done is I have physically sat down, turned on the camera and recorded the video. So what I did was I took this idea that was in my head and I am bringing it physically into the world so you can interact with it. And that's what you need to do. You know, too many of us fall into the trap of thinking mental activity is physical activity. But until you actually produce physical results that we can watch, read, pay for, you're never going to get that passion business going. So I don't want you to fall into that trap of thinking that all this mental activity is actually taking action. Action is action is action. And what I'd say to you is sometimes that one of the one reasons we don't take action is because we just don't believe in ourselves. We don't have the confidence, and maybe we don't have enough knowledge. You know, when I think back to the first time I wrote my first fiction book, I had no confidence in myself. I had no belief. I didn't think I had enough knowledge. And what I did was something that most of us probably do, is that I was waiting for a special moment to turn up. I was waiting for a moment where I would just wake up and suddenly the clouds would open and I would just feel confident. I'd have enough belief in myself and I'd have all the knowledge to write that book. Now, you and I know, hand on heart, that was never going to happen. That was just a lie I told myself. And I, unfortunately, kicked that can down the road for weeks, waiting for this moment when this belief would just spring into action and the confidence and all the knowledge. Now, at the time, I was building a lot of knowledge, but I thought I needed the belief and the confidence to take action. And I realized I didn't. When I had backed myself into a corner and had to force myself to actually write my first fiction book, I realized that, something, I could write the book, even though I didn't believe in myself, even though I had no confidence in my writing skill. I had a little bit of knowledge, probably not enough, but I had enough just to get started. And I wanted to remind you of that as well too, is that if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have any confidence in yourself right now, that doesn't mean that you can't take action. You can take action without any of those. When you take action, you'll probably find that you'll pick up the belief, the confidence, and the knowledge at a later point. But what we do is, unfortunately, we put that horse before the cart. We think those three things need to happen for us to take action. When the reverse is probably a lot truer. That when we take action, we're going to find all those things come along. Now, what I'd say to you as well, too, that another lie we tell ourselves about when it comes to taking action is we need to be ready. Again, we are waiting for this special magical moment when we're going to get out of bed and we'll feel ready. Again, there was no point on the run-up to me writing that fiction book of me ever feeling ready. It was lucky that I did actually back myself into a corner at the time and was forced to write that book. So there was a deadline that I had to actually work on, which forced me to forget this notion of being ready and just take an action. And again, I don't want you falling into that trap, believing that, well, I need to be ready to build this passion business. I'm not ready today. Maybe I'll be ready next week. Maybe I'll be ready next month. Maybe next year. But you're going to find you're never going to be ready. And there's never going to be a perfect moment. You're never going to have enough money. You're never going to have enough knowledge. You're never going to believe in yourself. So why waste all that time waiting for those things to come up when you know for a fact they're not going to come up? And I think maybe the reason that we hold ourselves back thinking that we need to believe in ourselves or that we need to be ready is just simply procrastination. Because what we're doing is we are taking a step into the unknown. We're doing something we've never done before. And it's far easier to tell ourselves, well, I'm not ready, I'll do it at another time. And what that does is that takes all the stress off us. We don't need to take the actions. We don't need to get outside our comfort zone. And we kind of think, well, that answers my question. That's why I couldn't do it, because I wasn't ready. But really, that was just a lie we told ourselves, and it's just another kind of procrastination tool we use against ourselves. So I don't want you falling into that trap either. Now, if you find that maybe you need a little bit of help actually taking action, I want to give you something to think about. And this is something that I use the odd time when I'm stuck and maybe just don't believe in myself. I remember reading a book many years back where there was a study done on a group of kids who were sitting a maths exam. And what they did was they gave a maths exam to the young kids on 2 different days. Now, on the first day, the kids went to school like normal, and what they did was they recorded how long the kids actually spent working on each of the problems. And then what they did was they took the kids back the following day, gave them another maths exam, which was similar to the first one. But what they did was they told the kids, we want you to all dress up tomorrow in your favourite superhero costumes. So what the kids did, we had Wonder Woman, we had Superman, we had the Flash, Batman, all these different costumes coming in the next day. And what they found was that when the kids actually sat down to do the maths exam the following day, the kids actually spent longer on the problems. And they worked out the reason that the kids actually spent longer working on the problems was because the kids on the second day weren't doing the problems as themselves. It was Batman looking at that maths problem. It was Superman. It was Wonder Woman. And what they found was that the kids actually, by looking through their heroes' eyes and thinking like their heroes, they actually spent more time on the maths problems. And that can be something that you can use, because as I said, it's something that I use from time to time. Is what I do is, if I don't believe in myself, if I just need a little bit of a confidence push, it's just to visualize somebody that I admire. Maybe somebody who's further along on their journey than me, and just kind of close my eyes and mentally put myself into their head. And what I do is I think to myself, if I was them, what would I be doing right now? And you're going to find that usually the thing that you should be doing right now is the thing that you're actually scared of doing. But by actually putting yourself in that person's head, sometimes it just kind of takes off the handbrake. It just gives you that little bit of a burst of maybe confidence where you say, well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. As I said, I've used it many times, and even the great Napoleon Hill talks about doing that as well too, that when he used to have problems, he used to visualize himself in his hero's eyes, and then he used to act on the information that he got back mentally from them. Not that he actually got any messages from the dead, but because he was looking at his problem through their eyes, he found his thinking changed. And then from his thinking changed, his actions actually changed. And that could be something you might want to try out if you do find maybe that it is hard for you to take an action. It's just put yourself in your hero's mind. Now, what I'd say to you as well is that when it comes to knowledge, this is another trap I think a lot of us fall into, is believing that we can't take action unless we have all the knowledge. Until we read all the books, have all the information, and then we'll know what we should do. Now again, going back to my early fiction writing career, I found that what I used to do was I used to read loads and loads of books about fiction writing. But what I found was that when I actually got into writing fiction, I found a lot of that knowledge was useless to me. It wasn't relevant. That the topics that these people were talking about were things that never came up as I was writing my books. And I found that I actually learned more on the job than I did from the books. And you may find that as well too, that what you're going to find is that whatever knowledge you have right now, all this knowledge that you're stockpiling in your head is not going to be relevant to you. Because sometimes when we read books, we read about someone else's journey and the problems that they had. Now you're going to find that your journey is going to be different than that other person, because you're probably in a different country. You could be a different sex. This person could be, their book could be written maybe 30 years ago or whatever. So your journey right now is completely different than theirs. And even though they may have laid out all the steps in their book of how they got from where they were to writing their fiction book, you're going to find that when you show up today that your journey is going to be different, because everything is different between the two of you. So you're going to find that you're actually going to learn more on the job as you are actually taking action. And sometimes, yes, you might come up against a kind of a dead end where you say to yourself, well, how do I get past this part? And then what I used to do in my fiction writing was I used to come to that part. I used to go and look for the answer to that question, find the answer, come back to my writing, and then continue along until I came to the next part where I was stuck and then go find the solution to that. So what I was doing was I was simply just taking enough knowledge just to keep me going, rather than actually filling my head with more knowledge than I actually needed, which was going to hold me back. Because sometimes having too much knowledge can actually be a burden. Because when you realize sometimes what you're getting into, you realize and say to yourself, well, there's no way I can do that. There's no way I could do that. And I think the reason I probably wrote my first fiction book was because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know all the steps. I didn't know how hard it was to sell a book. I didn't know how hard it was to come up with storylines and all those different things. I didn't know all that. And I think that worked to my benefit. So I'd say that as well too, is just don't fill your head with knowledge. You might feel that it's helpful to you, but it mightn't be relevant to you. And sometimes having all that knowledge and knowing what's ahead of you might stop you. Again, you're probably going to fall into the trap of saying, oh, I'm not ready yet, or I don't believe in myself. You're just not going to take action. So as I said, while it's great having all these fantasies and these dreams and goals in your head right now, the only way they're going to come about is you taking action. Simply taking action. And unfortunately, it's a trap a lot of us fall into. When you look around you right now, the amount of people who are actually taking action is a lot smaller than the people who could be taking action. So remember, whatever you have in your head right now, you can visualize about it, you can fantasize about it, you can affirmations and mantras and all that. But until you actually take action and bring it into the physical world, we can't interact with it, we can't give you money, and you're not going to be able to build a business around your passion. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.